What type of airbrush would you say would be good for a newbie, for someone just starting out?
Just starting out, again, I think it it really depends on what you need the equipment to do for you, because it's going to affect your equipment choice. And if you get addicted to airbrush, you're going to end up owning more than one airbrush. If you start out with one of the small little aquarium pump beginner sets that's like super inexpensive, and you really start enjoying the airbrush, you're going to have to move up to a larger equipment. It's one of the frustrations that I see students go through is, I just want to start a unit. I don't want to spend a lot of money. I want to find out if I like it. That's well and good as long as they understand the limitations of that starter equipment. If you don't expect more of it than what it's designed to do, you probably won't have a problem and you'll probably be very satisfied. But I see people get frustrated because they think that, or they think that it's going to do the same thing as a bigger equipment, and it isn't. Absolutely, it's a difference between a car and a truck or a minivan. You know, if you get your little Mini Cooper as a beginner set, great. It's going to be great to bop around town with and have some fun with.
Don't go off-roading.
Don't go off-roading with it. Exactly.
Yeah, my comparison was going to be, I was a music major in college, and you find that the kids who start off on the more professional instruments have a lot easier time learning and progressing and doing better on a professional instrument as opposed to a beginner instrument, because those beginner instruments have flaws.
Yes.
And these kids that start out on these beginner instruments may think that it's them, and they get frustrated, and they get, it's hard for them.
Exactly.
So if you start out on a better airbrush.
Well, very much. And unfortunately with airbrush, the cheaper the price, the more sacrifices and trade-offs are made in quality. And it's just a matter of machining, equipment, materials, and it is just the fact of it. You have to expect that something is going to be sacrificed, that something is going to be given up. That's why you can look at it, oh, I found an eBay system for $150. Why should I spend $400 on your system? It's understand there's differences. Yes, you can pay for a name. Yes, you can pay for a label, but it's naive to think that you're not going to be sacrificing something.
Oh, and I totally get that, because now I have a nice one. Taking this class from Lisa, she uses a Grex most, and so that's what I ended up buying. And I couldn't have been happier with the upgrade. I feel like I can actually do stuff with the airbrush.
Well, and the beginning equipment, the other equipment, I always advise, unless the equipment's flat out broken, or if it's small equipment and you can't get replacement parts. That's one of the sacrifices, is being able to get replacement parts that will be required. But if there's nothing wrong with the equipment, it's just not doing what you want it to do, don't replace it. Expand your capability set. If you've got a small starter setup and you're doing little dusty things with it, keep it for that. Get a side feed where you can do larger coverage and expand your capabilities. Don't replace things unless you have to.
All right. Someone said, what do you do if you have continual air coming out of your airbrush?
If it's one of those small units that we've been talking about that I call a disabled double action, you're always going to have air out of the front of the airbrush. If it's a regular traditional airbrush and you've got a larger power source and it didn't always do that, then you've got probably something going on with where the airflow comes in and out, where the trigger is. You could, usually if you get that air channel really gunked up, it'll be always on. If you go back to the autopsy picture, what I'm talking about is the air valve assembly. And the top of these airbrushes, you've got your trigger button that's pushing a piston down and making the air come on. These little airbrushes, where the trigger button goes through, there's a slot, and it's open. And we all have the experience where we dump color and product back in there accidentally. Or I've seen people that clean an airbrush by submerging it in water, which I absolutely positively do not recommend, because you're getting stuff down in that air valve assembly. Mm-hmm. And you don't want liquid in there at all. If you're completely disassembled and remove the air valve assembly, you're going to have to tear that airbrush apart and clean that part of it out. Make sure that the pistons interaction is smooth. That's probably what's going on.
Okay. Someone asked, do airbrush colors go bad?
I have not experienced them going bad. I use Chef Rubber colors. They've been a great enabler of mine as far as creativity and playing. And they don't have a high sugar content. And their lusters have a lot of alcohol in them, which I really like. And they layer and they work for me. I also have some other brands on the shelf that have more sugar in them. And I've had them for several years and they've still not gone bad. Cocoa butter, because it is an oil-based, eventually, like any oil, can go rancid. It just depends on how you store it and what kind of environment you have, how humid it is. Colors will separate. The liquid colors, you have to really shake a luster. It'll settle in that bottle, and if it'll settle in a bottle, it'll settle inside your airbrush. So you have to know how to agitate those colors, get them really, really mixed up. I do have, on the body painting side, I do have some alcohol-based colors where the different ingredients will finally start to break down and you get chunky, grainy bits of pigment. When you get to that level, and that's after years and years and years, then yeah, don't try putting it through an airbrush. It's ready for the trash.
Okay, great. And then our last question that we are going to ask is, well, it's basically a topic it's really being discussed on our little chat board here, is how to keep stuff, the airbrush colors, from just going everywhere. I mean, it is a problem.
It is a problem, and it is about your environment setup. What you've got is a cloud of overspray. So the longer you airbrush, the more those colors are going into the air. The first thing to do is to, if you're airbrushing occasionally and you don't have a dedicated spray booth, you're still going to want to do something DIY with a box fan or a fan directed out a window. You really need to be aware of where the airflow is in the room that you're airbrushing, because otherwise that color you'll find green on your on the top of your refrigerator 3 years later because you're putting it in the air. If you're airbrushing with a big cloud, you've got too much air pressure, and you're basically putting more product into the air than you are on your object that you're airbrushing. So turn down your pressure and tame it down a little bit.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that we tend to overspray everything, go
yes.
overboard. I think we hold the airbrush too far out and just let it spray everywhere. And I think that's the biggest problem that we have. Mm-hmm. But there still is going to be some of that overspray happening. But you can cut it down quite a bit.
You can cut it down by your technique. If I'm airbrushing a solid object, you don't treat the airbrush as a spray can and just and just go to town and zigzag all over the place, because you're using more product than you need. If you take my class, you'll see that I'll teach line by line by line by layering colors up in passes rather than one big long continuous spray. And that's one of the reasons, is every time you spray past that object, you're just dumping that color straight into the air and it's not going anywhere except the rest of your kitchen.
Exactly. Okay, I lied. I said we were going to ask that as the last question, but this is something that I feel like needs to be talked about. I know that we're talking a lot about what airbrush to buy, and we're talking about beginner or advanced. Is there anything specific that people need to be looking for? Because I know people go and look other places than in the cake industry for an airbrush. They'll go to Michael's, or they'll go look on eBay or whatever. Is there something specific, like PSI or the size of the needle, or
Absolutely. For the first thing is, and a really good indicator of whether or not the you've sacrificed too much for the quality of the equipment that you're buying is you have to be able to get replacement parts. You have to be able to get a new fluid nozzle. It's like tires on a car. Your needle and nozzles are going to need to be replaced. If the supplier, if the eBay store doesn't sell replacement parts, you are going to end up at some point in time with a doorstop. So that's the benchmark, is make sure that you can get the replacement parts that you need.
Okay.
Next thing is, for this industry, I recommend a 0.3 and above. There's lots of microns. Ooh, I want to do detail work, and they're more expensive. The smaller the needle nozzle size, the more finicky it's going to be, because the smaller those parts are. Okay. Because we like airbrushing with pearls on our cakes, and because we're airbrushing at lower pressures, the 0.3 is the minimum size that I recommend, and that's 0.3 millimeters. That's the smallest size that I recommend for culinary artists.
So that's the needle size, 0.3 millimeter needle size, or higher. Okay.
Or higher. The
All
bigger
right.
the
needle,
PSI? PSI for regular color and for a little accenting, like when I'm airbrushing on my wafer paper, I might be down to 5 PSI. If I'm airbrushing a 3-tier cake gold, I'm going to be closer to 15 or 20 PSI. Okay. And I want a good steady pressure. If I'm doing lots of big work, I'm going to go even higher than that. And cocoa butter, certainly, I want to be able to go 35 PSI.
Okay. So between 5 and 20 PSI for basic work. Anything more involved, bigger, any cocoa, you want higher than that.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. And it's got to be a good, steady pressure. It has to be a good, steady stream, because if it's just there going pop, 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 like that, I've seen these really small $59 wonders that will, all they can airbrush is, it's literally a dotted line. Because they're so small that they can't hold a steady stream of air.
Okay. All right, so there you go. There's some good information for you guys to go by, some guidelines. I think that's really important, and I think everybody appreciates that kind of information. So, okay, we are going to move on to the discount and the giveaway. So, yeah, let's see. Real quick before we do that, this is Lisa's going to be teaching a class in Chicago in November that you guys can go and take a look at. Do you have information for that on your Facebook page?
I just posted it this morning. If somebody asks a question, there's 50 other people that are having the same question. So there's no super secret knowledge with me. If I know it, I'll share it. If I have an opinion, I'll express it. Sometimes more diplomatically than others. But yeah, if you're on one of the social sites like Cake Central or on Facebook, or straight to me in my email, I'm here to help, because again, it's my way of paying it forward. And back to that shoulda, coulda, woulda, information is valuable, and sharing safety information, especially in the culinary world and the makeup world, because we're making decisions that affect other people. They're going to be eating what we're decorating, etc. So good practices and good understanding is just it's really important. So again, thank you for the opportunity for sharing that with everybody.
Wonderful. All right, again, thank you so much, you guys. You guys are wonderful. Thank you, Lisa, for coming on.
Thank you for breaking into your holiday for this.
Well, we're just hanging out, trying to get the most of our summer before it's over. So, yeah. Again, thank you. Thank you very much. You're such an amazing wealth of knowledge, and we appreciate you coming in and sharing with us. So, all right. I guess we will see you guys all next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, did you like what you saw? Are you wanting to learn more? Then click on the link below or press the subscribe button to keep yourself up to date on everything that CakeFu has to offer. Because there's always something to learn in the world of cake decorating.